You're listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. Each week, your host, Polly Requa, interviews veterinarians and individuals in the pet industry from across the nation answering pet questions. Bark and Wag podcast is produced weekly for your enjoyment, and show notes can be found at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. That's BARKNWAG.com. Please remember to subscribe to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk. Bark and Wag is dedicated to protecting our dogs through advocacy, education, and supporting like-minded dog lovers by selling custom pet products. Saving lives by selling collars, scrunchies, and swag. Please check out Bark and Wag's website, barkandwag.com. That's BARKNWAG.com to see the awesome merchandise. Bark and Wag collars and leashes, collar covers, and decorative bandanas are perfect for your pooch. For the owner of the house, we have t-shirts, sweatshirts, long sleeve shirts, hats, and even coasters. We are expanding monthly, so be sure to check back. We love pooch ideas for podcasts and merchandise too, so send an email to polly@barkandwag.com with your suggestions.
Welcome to Bark and Wag 15-Minute Vet Talk. I'm your host, Polly Requa. Today we're talking to Kirsty Nieto, professional dog trainer from Dog Training Camp USA in Raleigh, North Carolina. Welcome, Kirsty.
Hey, Polly. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. Today, based on one of our other podcasts, I wanted to talk to you about how you introduce a rescue dog into your home.
Oh, awesome. That's a really good topic. So if you're rescuing a dog from whether from a shelter or an adoption agency, a lot of times you can go with a puppy, but you might also be getting an adult, which either are just as good. Most of the time, the rescue or the shelter is going to help you match that dog to your lifestyle. So you're probably not getting into something that you have no idea what the personality is like. You probably met the dog before and kind of know what their activity level is like and things like that. So you're off to a good start. The important thing when you first come home with your dog, you want to already have all the supplies or most of the supplies that you think you need. So if they're crate trained, have a crate, have their food and their bowl and leashes and things like that. But the biggest thing to keep in mind is introducing them to the house. And the first couple of weeks that they're with you, it's like their settle in period. So that's a really vital time for you to establish your rules in the house. And not to say that, you're a drill sergeant, but you are establishing rules in whether or not you allow them on the furniture or if they're allowed in certain rooms or, things like jumping on the door to go out or getting into food, getting into off limits things in the house. So all kinds of things like that, you're going to establish kind of right off the bat when they're just getting to know you so that it doesn't become an issue later on down the road.
Sure, right.
I think one thing people do when they adopt a dog from a shelter or rescue is they feel really bad for them because they might have had a hard past, but that's kind of the worst thing you can do. So yes, they might have had a hard past, but dogs don't think about all those things that used to happen to them. They live in the moment. So the best thing we can do is start creating good routines and, good habits with them that they can enjoy going forward and keep them moving forward. So if you stay, feeling bad for them or treat them differently because they might have suffered before, really all that's doing is just reinforcing stress to the dog and confusing them. So you want to be confident and have this attitude that everything's going to be great. This is awesome. You've got a whole new life now and move forward for them. And I think you'll be off to a really good start.
Yeah, right. And because when we lived in Illinois, I would take in labs and Goldens. Mm-hmm. And a vet had told me, and I don't know if you find this true because I'm sure you do this more often than I did, but it takes about 2 to 3 weeks for the dogs to get used to your schedule.
Yes, and that's exactly what I tell people too. That 2 to 3 week mark is them getting to know you, getting to know what works too, and usually by that third week you have their real personality coming out too. So sometimes you adopt a dog, or even if you're just fostering, they're just really good. So you might have them for a week and you're like, why is this dog even here? They're perfect. They're not doing anything. They walk really well. They go to sleep. They're on my routine. And then you hit that third week where the dog's like, okay, I'm home. And then they show you everything, which is, it's not bad. It's just how they work.
Yeah, exactly.
So reinforcing good habits right off the bat and not expecting too much of them. So, you're not giving them total freedom of the house, because then they're just going to figure out what works for them instead of figuring out what you allow. Does that make sense?
Sure. Right.
And then by that third week, yes, their real personality comes out, but they're also following along with you already. So you're not having to undo anything. But yeah, that 2 to 3 week mark is just the settle in period. It's like the honeymoon period.
Yeah. And what do you find? I mean, if you do go to a shelter, you really don't know if a dog was trained via crate or not. Would you recommend people buy a crate in the beginning?
Yeah. So that's my default for any dog, unless I know that they have a big issue with a crate, because there are some dogs that see a crate and totally panic and might freak out or try to chew their way out. So I don't know if a shelter would know, because a lot of times shelters are, it might be a stray or an owner surrender, things like that. So they may not have very much history on the dog, but a rescue is definitely going to know, because most of the time, they'll have kind of a background on the dog. But, if you get a crate and your dog ends up not liking it, you can always work towards crate training or donate it to somebody or return it if it's not destroyed.
Yeah.
That's kind of like your safety. So to me, when I first bring a dog in, even the first 3 days. So for example, our board and train program, where dogs come and live with us and we train them and then take them home, that's a 3-week program where the dogs will live with us, and those first 3 days is a lot of crate time. And that's not that they're in the crate the whole time, but I use that as like default. So I establish a routine of a time to potty, a time to go for a walk, a time to play, and then a time to rest. So it's like a repeat throughout the day. And then having them back to the crate after our routine, they can watch what's going on in the house. They see me with my dogs or with guests coming in. It's a way of being all over the place, so they can kind of just take it all in and not be, zooming around or getting into things. And then usually after that third day, they're a lot more settled and relaxed because they haven't been pressured into doing anything, and then I can really get to working with them. So that crate is really a good habit to reinforce going into the crate.
Yeah, and one thing I can tell you, even if you're taking care of a dog, that's like for a friend, is always have that boundary. You mentioned that in the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
So we were taking care of someone's lab. I can't remember. This was years ago, and I just thought, it's a 5-year-old lab. It will be fine. Well, it got scared being in our house. And went to the bathroom all over the house.
Oh, yeah.
And so I should have just crated it, or, even just gated it in the kitchen or the laundry room.
Yes.
Until it got acclimated to my dogs and the house.
Yeah. And that's one thing that reminds me of, is that the space factor. So a new dog coming into the house, if they get free roam of the house, a lot of times that can be anxiety inducing because there's so much space. So the dogs they might start to pace, they might run around, they just have so much to explore, and you want to start really small and then gradually build. So instead of giving them that whole freedom and responsibility, in their minds it's responsibility. I've got to check all of this out. I have to go see what's over there. I have to sniff this and make sure that this is okay and check out this window. So instead of doing that and making them a little more anxious, we just bring it all into, okay, this is your little area for now. And then as you graduate, you can have more and more freedom. Just like with puppies, when you get a puppy, you contain them, and they might have a little playpen, and then they might have a room. So you build on what they can handle instead of just letting them go and seeing what they do.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you for all the tips and being on the podcast. We certainly appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. I love coming and talking about dogs.
Well, thank you very much, and we look forward to having you back.
Thanks, Polly.
Thank you for listening to Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, www.barkandwag.com, to your friends and other pet owners. Have a pressing question for a veterinarian? Ask your question at barkandwag.com under the podcast tab. This has been a KFR production. Join us next time for another edition of Bark and Wag's 15-Minute Vet Talk.